Hello, and welcome back to OT, the podcast. We are here to talk about watches, time, and how to spend it. I'm Andy Green.
They call me Felix Schultz.
Most people do.
Sometimes.
Some people call you FK.
Yeah, some people call me things that, Apple's explicit tagging process won't be happy with. But most people just call me Felix. Andy, what's been going on with you?
Bits been going on. Today's episode, we have obviously a guest,
Sure.
JKF Man, otherwise
Yes.
known as his real name, Jamie Ferguson. He's a photographer. He's done work with the Rake, Omega,
Yeah.
a lot of stuff with Permanent Style. They're good buds.
Yeah. He's a
but
well-dressed guy.
Yeah, he's a really cool dresser. So we'll be chatting to him. I think we find him in country
Ireland?
Ireland. Yeah.
A county in Ireland, even.
The county. Yeah, he's apparently got quite a cool little spot down there. But yeah, there's been a bit happening lately. There's obviously RL Buck has been very busy with the recent Phillips
Hitting that
auction.
hammer,
Have you seen the
hammering it down.
results?
I have seen some
Do you know
results.
how long this went for? Firstly, like hours, like 4 or 5 hours straight.
I don't know if that's particularly surprising, like with auction.
Exhausting.
Yeah, it's an endurance sport. Oral Backs is the Tim Mosso of auctions. Obviously, we spoke about some of the big dog Sylvester Stallone's watches coming up a couple of eps ago, and they hammered in. They hammered in for prices, Andy.
Yeah, I mean the big watches were Sly's. I think like 5, and then the Paul Newman other Daytona,
And
the non-Paul Newman,
the Monaco from what's his name?
bloody Steve.
Steve. Oh, mate, Steve Monaco McQueen.
That he gifted. It was to the props guy, right? On Lamar, but big auction. I think the whole catalog was about $30 million. Obviously, the big piece is the 6263 Paul Newman Daytona that his daughter Claire put forward, and that sold for $5.475 USD plus
plus all the fees and all that stuff. Quick question: why did that not sell for $17 million, Andy Green? Why not?
Well, it's not a Paul Newman dial.
Sure.
It's a Paul Newman watch, so that's still a huge premium on sort of what that watch would otherwise sell for. I don't know. I don't think anyone ever expected it to go again, but it is interesting. So this auction, I mean, auctioning was done online, and there was sort of 6 representatives in the room, including like Jeffrey Hess. And it was weird to watch. Like I tuned in early this morning to have a look at them going, and that they're wearing masks and sort of on the phone, and Oral's trying to like get the room going, but they're all kind of disconnected and trying to look at him, but also they're on the phones and trying to work everything out. Like it was quite stressful to watch. But it's interesting. The rumors are already flying as to who bought this watch. If you believe Instagram, Rolex bought this, and they bought the Paul Newman Daytona. If you believe James Cox, who came on a little while ago and sold the Paul Newman, it wasn't Rolex. So I have a question actually around all of this, especially around the Sylvester pieces.
Yeah.
So he would have been given the Panerai from Daylight.
Perhaps. Yep.
Perhaps. Yep. Probably given some of those Richard Milles as well, right? Like
Well, I know with certainly with the RM2501, that's the big sort of survivalist one with like the compass and stuff on it. He worked with them to develop it. Like was a collaborative piece sort of thing.
Yeah. So I mean, is there? It's an interesting thought, but is it cool to auction off watches that you were kind of gifted?
Well, I think it depends. I mean, it's. I mean, is it cool? Yeah, any gift. Like, it depends what they're doing with it. I mean, certainly, that last the Paul Newman's a great example where that went to working with charity. So, is it cool to keep something worth $17 million in your safe and not do anything with it?
Exactly. Yeah, I find it interesting. It's an interesting thought. I mean, obviously, it was so public that
I think with the Panerai, like certainly the Panerai, that enough time has passed for that to, not be a faux pas of any sort, and it's now part of the historical record. And for watch guys, it's really significant. And I think no one is questioning Sylvester Stallone's love of the brand or any of that stuff.
No, I think it's fine. It's just sort of it's a question that's been was sort of floating around of like publicly selling it. But I also think like the value of the press and the PR that Richard Mille has gotten out of the auction, and
Mm. Yeah, because
Sylvester's
the
was
other
a
ones
match.
was well, one of the other ones are one of the Expendables watches.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I don't know. Who knows what that is? That's maybe more of a commercial arrangement anyway. So maybe he's not as attached to them emotionally, and he certainly the video that Phillips did, he was wearing his gold sub Tiffany. That I don't
Look,
think he's going
if
to be
Richard
showing
had a problem
anytime.
with it, they would have told him, and if he had a problem doing it, he wouldn't have done it. So, and I
Yeah.
don't imagine he needs the money from that perspective. So
Mm.
maybe he's got plans with it.
Yeah, just talking about the Slayer, I think it's probably worth talking about the prices. So that Panerai, the daylight
Hmm.
one, had an estimate of between 40 and 80, and it sold ex hammer price, all that, for 214. So
Massive.
fair bit. I mean, not certainly not in the millions or anywhere close, but it's a very different beast. What do you think about that price?
Yeah, I always thought this was going to go higher than it otherwise should because of the significance uh, to the film and the whole movie prop industry that kicks around.
Do you think it would have gone for more back when Panerai was um,
Yeah,
hot?
100%. If
Yeah.
this was, I don't know,
10
what,
years ago.
15 years ago
Yeah.
when, yeah, 10, 15 years ago, yeah, I reckon it would have gone for like multiples of that.
Yeah, sure. And the Richard Mills, there's the big premium was the one with the compass and the camo strap, that really out there looking one that sold for
Mm.
937 and a half, which is
Yeah, and the Johan Blank as well, I think sold for like nearly $1 million.
yeah, and the skull was almost like
The
two.
skull, yeah,
Yeah, the skull was
that was
2K under a mil,
fuck.
which is around honestly, like for Richard Mill, for those sort of pieces, that's fairly close to retail.
Yeah, jeez. Is
So
it for that one? For the RM52?
I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I'm
Who
talking.
knows? That's so hard. It's one of those things where it's like you never look at the retail price because
Yeah.
you
You're
never
never gonna.
even think about
Yeah,
owning it. Question for you:
sure.
should we get Oral back on?
Um, I mean, maybe we could get an auction. We could have an
Maybe we'd
OT
auction off
auction.
each other.
Oh,
Charity auction, Felix and Andy.
I think we know who's getting the premium there.
Guys listening, let us know if you think we should get a bit of an auction perspective on. He's had some heavy involvement in
Yeah.
the most significant auctions of the last 4 or 5 years. So it could be
Mm.
interesting.
Moving on from that, hitting the hammer on that lot. What's next in the catalogue?
Other things that have been sold or that are
No,
happening.
no. Sorry, that was my maybe
Done.
slightly florid segue into what else is going on in our lives.
Melbourne Watch Week
Oh
at
yes.
Monards here in Melbourne. Monards. They had hosted Melbourne Watch Week, which was
So,
sort of our first IRL watch event. Some new old pieces that were released at various times throughout the year from brands like Rake,
yeah,
Jacques Drop.
so Melbourne Watch Week is what there's sort of a bit of an organising showcase of the Swatch Group's prestige brands, which is
Mm-hmm.
Breguet, Glasude Original, Jacques Dreux, Blanc Blanc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, what did you like? You saw some pretty nice watches there.
Yeah, I mean the Blancpain stuff was nice.
Oh yeah, which one?
The what's the desert one that Brett Curry photographed?
That's hot. That's hot on the wrist. That's
I finally saw the chinchilla dial Jacques Drop.
yes. Oh, I don't know. We spoke about that early in the old
Yeah, we did.
podcast. That's some way back cuts. It's a fancy Jacques Dreux with a dial made out of petrified wood from chinchilla.
The
It's
mango
a, which is
capital
which
of
is a
Australia.
melons. I think melons. Melons or mangoes.
Melons, yeah, no, it is melons.
We got a melon
And there was
festival.
also another Jacquardreau that was like a lily pond,
Oh yes,
uh,
with a
that had like
koi.
the koi fish. Yeah, I don't know what that model was, but it was crazy. And then there was another one that had a baguette center kind of like time, like
Subdial.
a subdial,
Yeah.
yeah, where it was the time display and then had all of these like birds on it. And then it had diamond encrusted case. And that was a unique piece that I think went for like 1.2.
Mm.
So that's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, no, they're
What about
lovely.
you?
Yeah, I always love seeing those high end Jacques Dreux ones. They're really beautiful. But I think the one that sort of it's good to see, sort of those. There was a lot of line extensions
Uh-huh.
for brands. They're not sort of pulling out their top design pieces at the moment. But the ones that I was really taken by were the Breguet Classiques. with
Hmm.
which is sort of their really traditional, guilloche dial, fluted middle, nothing too out there. But with blue dials, which looks really, really sort of modern, and yeah, I'm really, really into them. We'll have to link them up, as we say.
Speaking of blue dials,
Mm.
our friend William Messina had another banger limited edition with Unimatic,
Oh yeah,
the Messina Lab Marine U1 MLM.
what a name!
Did
What a
you see that?
watch! I did. I saw it. I mean, you couldn't help but see it on the Instagram when it went live.
Jeez, that went quick, didn't it?
What did you sort of got that mill sub vibe?
Yeah, it's yeah, vintage sort of Tudor mill sub vibe in that modern kind of chunkier Unimatic case.
Hmm, hmm.
Really nice blue dial, really nice blue tones all over. Classic Messina. And we got the press release a little bit before it was coming out, so we knew it was coming.
Yeah,
Man, I was just like,
you
this
tempted?
is yeah. It's always the worst timing though with the Messina drops, but sold out real quick. Sold out
Mm.
very, very quickly. So that's cool. It's cool to see.
Cool. Well, I think we should have a little pause for a second, Andy.
Today's episode of OT, the podcast, is brought to you by eBay.
That eBay.
Yeah, eBay is one of the largest watch marketplaces in the world, with a timepiece sold every 5 seconds.
So they've already sold like 3 while you've been listening to this. Today we need to talk about eBay's new authenticity guarantee service, where independent experts authenticate your luxury watch purchase over $2,000 so you can shop with total confidence.
Alrighty, Felix, how does it work?
It's pretty simple. Browse and shop eBay's listings with the authenticity guarantee badge, and when you buy an eligible watch, the seller sends the watch directly to a third-party authenticator.
That's where your watch is authenticated. Leading industry experts confirm the watch and collateral matches the listing title, description, and images. They also perform a multi point physical authentication inspection, attach a security tag to the watch, and then it's shipped with a unique authentication card.
And like magic, your item is delivered safely via 2-day shipping with a signature required.
Yeah, that's cool. And what watches are eligible?
If it's a wristwatch listed at over $2,000 or expected to sell for over 2K, it's included. Some popular brands and models are automatically included. Smartwatches, parts, and accessories are not, and neither are customized watches.
Felix, is there any additional cost?
No. Through the authenticity guarantee, eBay picks up the tab on authentication as well as the 2-day secure shipping from the authentication facility to the buyer.
Now, it is important to note that this is a US only service at the moment, but they're always looking to expand to global markets.
So head to ebay.com/authentic watches to learn more about the authenticity guarantee.
With authenticity guarantee, there are no fakes, no fraud, no doubt.
Let's get back to that show. We've got to chat to Jamie. What are you looking forward to, Andy?
I'm going to chat about Jamie too, Jamie.
Yeah.
Let's do it. He's a menswear lifestyle photographer. You'll know him as JKF Man on the gram. Born in Toronto, he grew up in Canada. Yeah, so born in Toronto, Canada, but he's been based in the UK for like the last 5 or 6 years. You've seen his work everywhere. Like there's stuff on Omega's website that they did for Pity a few years ago.
Nice.
Really interesting guy. Let's just call him and talk to him.
Let's get him on now.
Jamie, it's great to have you on the line. For those who haven't come across, your work or your social media presence, both of which are very strong, why don't you give us the top line? Who is Jamie Ferguson, and how did he end up as a professional photographer?
God. It's funny, whenever I'm asked this question, I'm always just like, well, prepare yourself. It's very long. It's a very long-winded answer, so I've always been trying to kind of trim it down and kind of make it shorter. So basically, I've been in the industry for about just over 10 years now, working in menswear, but I've just been working as a freelance photographer for, say, the last 5 to 6 years. But so prior to being a photographer, I was working behind the scenes for brands like Dax and Drake's. And then off the back of my last position, which was with Drake's, I had a few brands get in touch and were wanting to see if I could shoot with them because I was doing a lot of the imagery and social media stuff for Drake's at the time. And I was like, yep, sure, let's try that. And so things have kind of just progressed from there.
Very cool. Felix?
Well, I was just going to sort of say, so you sort of fell into photography.
Mm.
And what your Instagram at least seems to be a lot of sort of semi-formal portraiture. What makes a good, sort of casual portrait photograph?
I don't know. It's strange because it can kind of depend upon. I think it really depends on the photographer, what their interest is in their interest in the subject that they're shooting. So for me personally, again, as I say, I got into the industry because I was kind of obsessed with menswear, like loved the clothes and the style, and so when I kind of transitioned into photography, that essentially has been my photography has essentially been an exploration of that obsession. The way I started taking photographs was obviously shooting the guys that I thought had great style, and shooting guys who were wearing outfits that I thought looked good. And then slowly, it's been kind of almost like an unconscious evolving of that into like the kind of how I edit the photos, how I kind of want to compose them, frame them. But mainly, it's always been a focus. A lot of time, the focus has been on the clothes. But
Mhm.
then I suppose maybe in the last like 2-3 years, I very much am drawn to like a much more natural, candid kind of portrait or photograph.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so trying to draw that it became, which again is almost the realization of it when you're aware of it, becomes harder to actually then do. But realizing that was something that I very much enjoyed, and that was the type of photography that I kind of wanted to pursue more of, and trying to incorporate more of that into my everyday, day to day work photography. And so trying to explore that, because a lot of the guys that I shoot, a lot of the things that I shoot, always shooting with professional models who are used to being photographed. So you kind of
Mm.
have to put them, just shooting with kind of regular guys, or whatever, and kind of just trying to put them at ease and be like, it's you don't have to worry about this. I'm not going to make you look like an idiot. Like, you want to get a good photograph. And oftentimes for me, that has been trying to be be a little more lighthearted with the portraiture and the type of portraits that I want to take. So simply like smiling, laughing, and trying to steer a little away from that kind of slightly more traditional the very kind of more traditional serious menswear kind of thing.
Yeah, great. You mentioned the personality that comes through in the shoot, and that's the ultimate goal for you. Over the
Mm,
last few months, naturally through the state of the world,
mm,
and it's something I've really enjoyed seeing is these. I don't know if they're self portraits or not, but they're the photos of yourself up on your
mm,
social media feeds.
mhm.
Being a photographer professionally and knowing all of those elements that make a good photo, how do you then model in a shoot? And I mean, do you take those photos yourself? But because if you do, that's impressive. But how do you kind of apply that and do it yourself?
I had somebody ask me this recently, and I remember reading a quote which is ridiculous. I don't even know if it's true, but I remember it was like Kim Kardashian was just like, you take 300 photos of yourself, and you then to get the one good shot. But literally, so I am taking all those photos myself. So it's
Hmm.
like setting up the lighting, setting up obviously the camera on the tripod, etc., positioning yourself, whatever, and then shooting with a remote trigger to get the camera to go off. Weirdly, it really increased my respect for professional models, because I'm kind of like, there's the thing, how aware they are of their face and their bodies, and the way, the angles, the positions that need to get into, knowing what position the camera's in, and knowing that, okay, I'm going to turn like this to be able to make my the angles of my body and with clothes look like this. Like, it's been a phenomenal kind of I've really kind of enjoyed that aspect of it, because I'm kind of just like little things where I'm tether capturing at the same time, just so I can kind of immediately see, okay, that shot looks like this. Okay, I need to turn my head a little
Hmm.
more. And then a lot of the times and then some of the other times it's just kind of letting loose and just kind of just doing stupid stuff. and just kind of experimenting and seeing if it works. Really,
I mean, look, it's not easy being so good looking. So I think you've captured the problems of being handsome. Really quickly, what do you shoot on, mate?
A Canon 5D Mark IV at the minute.
Yeah, popular choice.
Yeah.
Popular choice. So, question: something you've someone very famous that you've shot, His Royal Highness Prince of Wales, one of the most iconic menswear guys on the planet.
Absolutely.
I can only imagine that would have been phenomenal. But who else have you enjoyed photographing over the years?
I mean, obviously, it's hard for me not to it's hard for me to think about this and not mention like all the guys that I was very lucky to shoot for the book for this guy. So that just there was a lot of guys that I already knew, and then a lot of guys that I just knew, obviously through their online persona or kind of knowledge of their brand and what they did. And so some of the guys that I was reached out to, like who I'd never met before, like Yukio Akamine and Huma Majid in New York, and being able to spend the time with those guys and like how great that was for them to not only give me the time, to come and meet them and shoot them, but also kind of how great an experience that was and how much I feel that helped me develop as a photographer and kind of, as I say, kind of realizing more of the type of photography that I was wanting to do. So really enjoyed that. Like Yukio Akamine, especially, like he was such an absolute gentleman when I met him, and obviously used to see him at Pity all the time, and I was always just like, who is this guy? He looks incredible.
Yeah.
When I was shooting in Japan and got to spend basically the day with him, and he was so kind, and I couldn't believe the time that he gave me. Like he essentially gave me, as you say, the whole day, and never complained, never was kind of bad tempered or impatient with anything. He was just so lovely. Some of my favorite shots that I've ever taken. First place that we shot in was this kind of art deco hotel in Tokyo, and just those shots. I think there's the double page spread in the book of him just at the bar with a whiskey in there, the American bar that was in the hotel, and I was just like, oh my god, this is incredible. There was just this little shaft of light that was coming down. The bartender who was there, I was just like, can you just switch these lights off apart from this one? And then it's that thing where it's very weird sometimes, like what you'll maybe see as a photographer or whatever, or something that you'll want to try. And oftentimes I am wanting to try a lot of stupid stuff. And then getting somebody, especially an older gentleman, like to be like, okay, look, we're going to do this. I think it's going to look like this. Can you sit here and do this and do that? And he was very receptive to that. And which, as I say, just couldn't have asked for a nicer subject to shoot.
Fascinating. I find that really interesting where you've got sort of, a long sort of luxurious shoot, which I want to contrast again that with the photos of the Prince of Wales that you took. I can't imagine what goes into setting up. Like, how do you make something like that happen? And what's it like? Like, how much time do you have? And how do you speak to someone like that and tell them to do something?
So for the Prince Charles shoot, I was very lucky because I was aided by the format with which the tour that was going on and what was happening. So I very much like shooting candid, natural kind of portrait photography where the subject maybe isn't always necessarily aware or trying to make it like they're not necessarily looking directly at the camera. And so this was essentially a tour that he was being given of a new tailoring workshop that was being opened at a Highland estate outfitters, Campbell's of Bewley. And so Prince Charles was coming up to open this new workshop. And so he was essentially being given a tour of the workshop and meeting the staff and the owners of Campbell's. And I know the owners, and they asked me, they're like, could you come up and document this? And I was like, excellent. And so there was never any one point where I had to be, Your Highness, can you blah, blah, blah. I just knew. I had said to, luckily having shot in that store before, I said to John Sugden, who's the proprietor, I said to him, can you make sure at some point he ends up in front of the Tweed Wall, which is one of the entrances into the store. There's this two walls essentially where they've just put all the bolts of estate tweeds and whatnot that you can pick out to have your a suit or jacket made up in. And the light is brilliant. The backdrop is amazing. And so I was just kind of like, could you just make sure whatever happens? And John just said to me, he's like, don't worry. One of the last things that he's doing is he's going to come and sign the visitor's book. And so that was the shot that we ended up getting. So that was a case of just one, working with what we had, in terms of, I just I kind of roughly knew his where he was being walked through, and kind of roughly knowing where I had to position myself, but then also knowing that this was the final place that he was going to end up, and I was going to be able to, get the shots that I was going to need there. And that's kind of roughly how it turned out. So it's a bit of working on the fly and a bit of as much as you can preparing for what can be prepared for.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because I was wondering if it was that, like I've heard stories of, like, I've seen a photo, it was like this was taken in 15 seconds in a hotel room.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
ridiculously beautiful portraits, and it's such a skill.
Yeah.
I do wonder as well. So you've spent your life around some of the most stylish men and people on the planet. What makes someone have that sort of element of style? Like, anyone can have the right sort of suit of clothes or whatever, but
Mm.
is that enough, or what is it?
It's weird because I think, like, I'm assuming everybody who's kind of into menswear, it's an ever evolving process. And certainly even myself, it's like the older I get, the more kind of comfortable and settled I get in what I like to wear and what I consider to be stylish. But at the same time, it's also opened my eyes up and, made me realize that I think almost every guy who's into menswear has kind of gone through this stage when, early on, where there's the menswear rules, where it's kind of like, okay, I have to wear it like this, but I can't wear this. And I can wear this color, but I can't wear it with that color. And I've been lucky that through the job, I've been able to see a lot of, as you say, a lot of style in different parts of the world. And through that, it's made me realize that you could have that rule in your head and then suddenly see an example of that rule being broken on the street. And you're just like, oh my, like, crap, that looks amazing. I've never thought it could be worn that way. And then that flips everything on its head. And that has made me, one of my mantras now is like, never think that something can't work, because it's like, there may be a day, and I'm not to say that, you're going to see things that you're like, oh, I'm not too sure about that, but there will be something that you'll see one day where you're like, I've thought that could never work, and then you'll see an example of it, and you're just like, oh wow, that's how you do it.
It's really funny. We had Jack Carlson, who's the founder of Rowing Blazers, on recently, and one of the things that I noticed about his products was, like, a lot of it, I really love, and I own some of his product, but there was a big chunk of it that I kind of said, look, Jack, this is stuff that is just cool regardless, and I know right now I'm not going to look in that particular outfit, but if the person that does walks down the street, you're just going to be like, oh wow. And it's amazing that he's sort of created this whole brand off it.
I wonder, you've obviously sort of got a bit of a resume in the space, and it must be super competitive. Like, so much sort of, people trying to get noticed, or they've got the Instagram accounts, and they've got the fits, and they've got all the stuff. What's your sort of? Do you have any advice to someone that's trying to sort of break into that menswear photography scene?
As a photographer,
yeah.
It's kind of tricky because it's like, basically nowadays it's like, I always find it amazing, like, having been able to speak to some photographers, like, from back in the day, who, before everything was digitized, and where they were shooting like runway shows, and they were earning like six figures a year because
Crazy.
And all they were shooting was literally like 2 fashion weeks a year. That was it, because nobody else did it. It was such a skill, and to an extent, it's been amazing that photography has essentially become democratized, and the technology's gotten to a point where, even on our phones, like, you can be an amazing photographer just using an iPhone. So in terms of advice, biggest, get out there, shoot as much as you can. And I think it's always a really good idea to have a clear idea in your mind about your subject and what you want to shoot. whether that be
Yeah.
menswear and style, portraiture, architecture, landscape, whatever. I mean, if you want to be a landscape photographer, don't go shooting street style. Like, make sure you're getting out as much as you can to, I don't know, the hills and the mountains or whatever,
Yep.
to shoot
Snap
landscape.
sharply dressed dudes on the street.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay. Speaking of sharply dressed dudes, we've mentioned you're a very talented photographer, but you're also a very stylish man. You dress very well.
Mm,
It takes one to know one, I guess. And what I love, we did a bit of research for the show, but
mm.
I'm really curious to hear what brands you've been enjoying at the moment. Maybe you have a favorite. You've probably got half a dozen, but we'd love to hear sort of the brands that you're into and that you like to support.
Oh my god, that list is
Top three.
extensive.
Top three.
Top. Oh, don't even. Oh, don't.
Let's
Because
do
that's.
let's do jackets, shirts, and shoes. Your favorite jacket, shirt, and shoe brand.
Oh, that's good.
Oh man, jacket, shirt, and shoe brand. That is tough. Jacket wise, yeah, it's funny. So right, jackets and suits. I have a lot of amazing jackets, and some for example, I've had some bespoke pieces from say Tom Sweeney and from Sartoria Caliendo, which I love, and some guys actually who done some amazing made to measure pieces for me, based out of Australia, actually out of Melbourne. Trunk Tailors.
Oh yes,
Those
Jack
guys
and
do, yeah. Those guys do really good work, and I love, as I say, love their stuff. All that stuff has fitted me very well. But off the rack, and again, I'm slightly biased because obviously I used to work for them. But off the rack, the Drake's suiting and the jacketing, it fits me incredibly well. It's right up there in terms of what I would want in terms of construction. And I have to do very little to it, which is really great. I oftentimes maybe just have to shorten the sleeves a touch, but that's almost it. And I don't have to do, and even with the suiting, with the trousers, I basically just hem them and put a cuff on them, and that's it. I don't have to do anything else to them. And I love the ease of that, like the fact that I can, I'm sure anybody who's into tailoring and whatnot kind of can go into that, and you can nitpick and like, oh, I need
yeah.
and it's, oh, I need this let out, it can be, and I just love the ease of that, like just being able to like boom on.
All right, what
In
about
terms
shirts?
in terms of shirt, I'm trying to think, like, so I've got a couple. Quite a few denim Western shirts.
Love it.
So obviously I've got like that heavy sawtooth one from Bryceland's,
I
which
love
is
it.
amazing. It's weird. I remember when I first got
Worth
it.
the money? Can I ask? It's worth the the price tag.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, I'll
It's
get one.
It's that weird thing where, and I, because I have friends, I'm sure as everybody does, who aren't into menswear, and like you talk about how much you spend on clothes, and they look at you like you're a crazy person, and you're just kind of like, yeah, but I'm gonna have, like, for the Bryson shirt, for example, it's like, it's so heavy duty, it's so hard wearing. I'm like, I'm gonna have this shirt probably for the rest of my life, it's gonna last me the next 10, 15 years. And my thing is always like the cost to wear ratio. I'm like, yeah, it's gonna cost you a little bit more money, but I'm gonna be able to, it's not gonna fall apart after the first wash.
Yeah, totally.
It's so good. And so I've got a Western shirt from them, and then a couple Westerns from the Barbonera, but the Barbonera boys. They're light wash and then the darker wash as well. And then annoyingly, again, back to Drake's, because I have a lot of their button downs. Obviously owning a shirt factory, they do shirts really well. And again, ready to wear off the rack, don't have to think about it. Yeah.
And what about shoes?
And shoes?
Finally.
Shoes.
Wheels.
I'm a huge Alden fan. I have a lot of Aldens. Aldens are amazing as well, because as I'm sure anybody who's bought a pair of Aldens, the amount of lasts that they have, it's ridiculous, and the variety in them, and then also the widths that you can get, and so it's, but once you find that last that works for you, you're set for life. You're like, boom, that's it, that's all I need. And again, I love that aspect of the fact that, if as long as I take care of these and get these resold, like, they're going to last me for 15 years or more. So yeah, a huge fan of Alden's. I really love the kind of the loafers that Bodo and Lange do, the Sagans, like that kind of slip on like Belgian kind of style loafer. Love those. Super comfortable. Whenever I'm in somewhere like hot, like when I got my first pair, I was shooting in Japan, and it was like so humid there. But I had those, and it was amazing. Like they were the most comfortable things I had. And then equally, when you're in Italy in summer in June or July, shooting, it's like equally great thing to have. They're so comfortable, and yet you can still look relatively smart and stylish, which is really good. But yeah, I think those two are probably pretty good.
That's a very good quick little capsule collection there. Andy, could we just take a break? I need a refill.
What are you drinking, Felix?
It's your classic filter roast from our new coffee sponsor, Inglewood Coffee Roasters.
Beverage sponsor, Felix, we have made it.
Yeah, I've got a cheeky Yirgacheffe filter on the go at the moment. Ethiopian bean with some light floral notes. It's my daily, and I can't get enough.
Well, Felix, I'm actually punching out another double espresso using their Colombian Spirit of Peace espresso roast blend. It's sweet and biscuity.
So here's the deal. Use OT30, that's OT30, for 30% off your order at checkout. On top of that, Inglewood Coffee Roasters offer free shipping on all Victorian orders and Australia-wide when you spend more than $50.
Head to inglewoodcoffeeroasters.com.au to place an order today. We'll link that up. OT the podcast, fueled by Inglewood Coffee Roasters. What do you think about Australian style in general? Do we have a style? Do we just look to other parts of the world? How can we improve it?
I think it's how can we improve it? I think it's strange because again, it's down to weirdly what I touched on there about dressing appropriately for your environment and the occasion. It's like my sister, she actually lives out in Australia. She lives in Perth. And so we've been able to get out there a lot of times, and you kind of see, I'm like, well, yeah, like the environment that we're in there, and they're near the beach and stuff. It's like, well, no, you wouldn't be wearing a suit or tailoring or whatnot, because that the overall style over there is, obviously the weather's a lot hotter, and the overall style is a lot more casual than, say, I don't know, the city and Fleet Street in London or whatever. But equally, I think it's nice to see purveyors of I don't know if you call it necessarily Australian style, but like as you mentioned there, like Patrick Johnson tailors and Trunk tailors, those guys, and my friend of mine, Christian Kimber, and it's really nice to kind of start seeing those guys. I mean, obviously PJ's been around for a while now, but kind of starting to see them get more global recognition outside of Australian, and it's almost that that kind of, I don't know, smart. It's a terrible description, but that's smart casual. Like again, it's like a lot of obviously like PJ, for example, like they're doing, they do a lot of amazing kind of casual suiting, and they do it in a looser construction and different fabrics and whatnot that's more appropriate for us.
Do you think that that's the future of maybe sort of talking about that COVID style? Do you think that something a bit more relaxed that sort of is a blend between casual Fridays, working from home, comfortable?
I don't really know. I mean, I think certainly because it could be definitely. I don't necessarily know if that's the end game of it per se. I think certainly what we're seeing and probably what we were experiencing beforehand, just pre-COVID, was there's so many more brands out there these days that guys have access to. Like the internet's obviously been in this amazing tool that has allowed, guys in America to be able to buy from Japanese stores, and, everybody can buy globally now, which is amazing. And also I think it's a lot easier these days to be able to start your own brand. So, you see a lot of these online only stores and online only brands that are kind of popping up. I don't feel that would have been as easy, say 10, 15 years ago. And so to an extent, it's allowing guys to experiment a lot more. And so I think you're seeing a real melding of styles and a real melding of tribes, for argument's sake. Like it used to be a lot more, almost clear cut. And nowadays it's kind of like a guy who wears, a well-cut suit equally could be wearing, skatewear, or, would be wearing, I don't know, Palace,
Niche trainers.
or
Yeah.
or rowing blazers. It's like I don't feel now that you have to be stuck in the one, this is obviously, and it's great because you can, as I say, you can kind of experiment and wear what you want. So I think it's weird. I think that we're going to see a continuing evolvement of that. And certainly I think with lockdown, that's just kind of added another element to it, to this kind of, not necessarily, I want to say, casualization of the workplace, because obviously I think that kind of slightly is what's happening, but almost more of an acceptance of guys can kind of wear what they want now. And there's less of the kind of the rules and regulations surrounding that.
Yeah, 100%. An interesting sort of saying, people can wear what they want. It makes it maybe harder in some ways to. I'm thinking here of all those like those peacocking guys a pity.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something that's a little bit in the past. Perhaps. Who do you respect in terms of men's style? This is a super broad question, but like just really personal. The people that you like go, this guy always does it right.
Hot take.
Hot take.
We just got to tag the people that don't make the list.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Ethan, obviously, Newton from Brycelands, I think, is certainly somebody that I look to. Tony Sylvester in London, Gautier Borsorello. It's a lot of the guys that I'm drawn to personally are guys that, again, are almost those guys who are kind of experimenting with a lot of different styles. Ethan's not just stuck in tailoring. Like it's vintage, it's workwear, it's heavy metal rock, metal t-shirts and stuff like that. And I always love seeing what those guys do. And because more often with them, I'll see outfits that they'll wear, which surprise me. And I like to be surprised. Like I like seeing stuff where I'm like, oh, I never thought you could really do that. And that's the thing, is that it doesn't always have to hit. At times it can miss, and you're like, oh, okay, like, yeah, I'm not really feeling that. But I like the fact that they're, I like people who are taking a risk with that.
Well, in the words of Michael Jordan, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
You don't.
So
exactly.
Be brave with those fits, fellas. Yeah. But and yeah, he's a stylish guy. Personally, though, how do you put together an outfit? What's your approach to, this denim shirt with this pair of jeans with these loafers? Like, what goes through your head when you're putting together the fit?
It's tricky because it's like going back slightly to, as you say, it almost in a sense would be easier to have a uniform, because then you could be like, right, I'm going to whack this on and this is what I'm going to wear every day. Because at times because I'm, as somebody who really enjoys clothing and likes kind of wearing a lot of different kind of styles, at times it can be infuriating. If you've got maybe 10 minutes to run out the door, and you're kind of like, I always find myself doing this where I'm kind of like, but I feel like I want to put a new outfit together, and I don't want to just throw on something that I've maybe tried in the past that I know works, because I'm kind of like faced with this new. I'm like, okay, let's try to make something. Let's try to make some magic, and then you're kind of just like, you're running behind him. You're kind of like, fuck, I just need to get out the door. So a lot of the time, there's always like fallbacks that you'll kind of have. You're like, okay, well, I know this pair of jeans works with these shoes, and like this, and I'll wear these socks with it or whatever. And then again, a lot of that of what you'd be wearing will be dictated by, like, where am I going? What am I doing? Okay, like, I need to have this level of, I don't know, for example, formality. I'm kind of like, okay, so do I need to wear a tie? Okay, I don't need to wear a tie. So that immediately you're like, okay, well, I can wear, I'll wear this shirt. Okay, I can wear this shirt, works well with this jacket, and blah, blah, blah. And I think a lot of times as well, over the years, what I found is, when I was a lot younger, my eyes were very drawn to, and they still are, to be honest, because very colorful, or or something that's incredibly patterned, or something you just think's awesome. You're like, this is dope. but now I kind of think in the realms of the scope of my wardrobe, and I'm kind of just like, would this really work with anything I have? Like, I think that's awesome, but like, I don't have anything that could work with that. So you kind of now a lot of my wardrobe is kind of a little more. The color palette's a little more neutral, so it's a lot easier to pair stuff together, which I would recommend as a huge help. Not, as you say, you're not even having to think so much then about like, oh, does this go? It's going to go together. You're just kind of like, that's fine. And then there's just little tweaks here and there which you can kind of pay attention to when you're buying your clothes. Like, for example, like on jeans, I prefer a much higher rise trouser. So I kind of the denim I'll look out for would be like, well, no, I want a high rise on it. So that forces you, into kind of, and as I say, in terms of your overall look visually, that kind of changes your proportions and, kind of makes somebody kind of look at you a little different, because you're kind of like, oh, he's wearing jeans, but they're cut just a little bit differently or whatever.
I've got a question sort of on that. And I know we should talk about watches. We'll do that in a minute.
Sure. We'll get there.
How do we how do you, in menswear and men's style, how do you walk the line between what's fashion and what's style?
It's funny, fashion, it's weird. Fashion and style and fashion and menswear, those kind of things it's weird because they can be umbrella terms, or you can, but then at the same time, speaking to guys who you're like, are you into menswear? It almost kind of, there's an understanding there as to what we're talking about. So fashion to me is more, is more extreme, risque, almost kind of art. It's, for me personally, it's I mean, to take nothing away from the designers or anything like that, it's like, the pieces that they're creating are beautiful, like stuff that's going down the catwalk or runways or whatever. But I'm like, I'll look at stuff and anything that I'm kind of like, would the average guy on the street be able to wear that? And I'm like, and if they can, if you're, I'm like, well, that to me is a little more, that's more fashion than menswear. So when I talk about menswear, it's more, it's more your basics, it's more your wearable kind of things.
I like to think of them as sort of fast and slow. Fashion seems to come and go really quickly, and then the style is sort of a bit more timeless. And I think within style there is sort of trends and sort of fashion and things. Various outfits and items do
come and go,
become popular at certain time periods. But that sort of umbrella over it is sort of maybe it's the approach to more timeless outfits, and naturally through that you're going to get a bespoke suit made to last a long amount of time, not just for an event or two, and then never wear it again if you're the everyday person, which I guess comes back to your point of sort of being that everyday person. And what would Felix off the street wear? Is he going to wear a colorful Gucci silk print shirt or a nice tailored double-breasted suit?
It's weird
whenever the Gucci shirt.
Definitely Gucci shirt. It's weird whenever I describe this. The example I always use, I don't know why, is a see-through T-shirt, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I don't know if I've ever seen that anywhere. I'm always just like, would the average guy on the street wear a see-through T-shirt? Probably not. And I'm like,
Justin Timberlake, circa 2002, I believe.
But what you said there, Andy, is a really good way of thinking about it. Like,
cool.
I mean, in terms of, as you say, trends in menswear, it's like, we're kind of seeing a little more, I mean, we have seen for a while, but like, say for the last 3-4 years, we're seeing more double-breasted jackets and suiting. And it's like, people are like, oh, this is a trend. I'm like, kind of. It's like, it's something that's like, as you say, everything's cyclical. It kind of sits within this, this wheel. And even though it's maybe not popular now, it will still come back around. It's still there, so you can still wear it. And so it just so happens that, DBs are kind of having a moment right now. But then when it goes away, it's like, don't get rid of them, because, it most likely will come back around.
Love that. And speaking of timeless trends, as Felix says, let's talk watches. The first question
terrible.
I want to know is,
wow, Andy, that was terrible.
We get pretty good at it. Where do watches fit in with an outfit? I know you've styled watches. I know you've done stuff with the
Mm.
Rake and possibly Revolution as well. But where does a watch fit in an outfit?
It's funny because I've always said I've been very lucky lately to kind of, or certainly in terms of the last couple of years as my working as a photographer, to not only photograph amazing watches, but get to speak to watch experts and people who have much more knowledge than I do. And every time I talk to them, I'm always just like fully upfront and like, I am an idiot when it comes to watches. Like I know absolutely nothing. I had no interest in watches,
Mm-hmm.
even before I started working as a photographer. But throughout, as you shoot more, you kind of start seeing guys and seeing things, and it's those, as I say, those details of the outfits that you start noticing. And certainly, watches were something that I started picking up on and seeing on, some great examples on a few people, where you're kind of like, well, where's this from? This is really cool. And then it's, oh my God, it's a rabbit hole to go down, like to kind of suddenly, when you're first, like somebody recommends something to you and then you're like, okay, and you start looking at it, and then you have all these amazing outlets right now, like
Get out while you still can.
Yeah,
While
exactly.
you still can.
Like obviously, like as you say, the Rake and Revolution and Hodinkee, like all those guys, their coverage on watches is amazing. And me personally, I got very drawn into vintage watches. Like I had a friend of mine, funnily enough, Tony Sylvester, and I was chatting to him one day. He had this amazing watch on, and I kind of remember, so weirdly, yeah, this was the gateway for me. Was that my wife and I found out she was pregnant, and I loved the idea of buying a watch that I would have to be able to give to my son when he, turned 18 or 21 or whatever. And so I saw this, I started speaking to him about it, and I was just kind of like, hey man, like, I don't even know where to start. Like where, what could you point me in the right direction? And he basically recommended a few kind of, as you say, routes to kind of go down. And one of which was the Dirty Dozen collection, which that was, I think if anything, that was probably my gateway drug into the watch world.
And did you end up? Have you ended up getting something, with your son in mind?
I did actually. So actually managed to find a pretty good example of one of the Omegas from the Dirty Dozen. So I've got an Omega WWW, which was the first watch that I bought, and that the idea is that, as I say, that'll be the watch that I give to my son. Which I've already told him about now. Now he's 3. He's very aware of this, and he's just like, "Is that my watch, Dad?" And I'm like, "Yes, it is, but it's not yet. Like, just like I want to get some enjoyment out of this. Like, not yet." And as I say, that kind of started me down that path of kind of learning more. And I'm still because it kind of fits hand in hand with, as you say, men's style and the way a guy kind of gets dressed and puts an outfit together. I'm still, it's more from an enthusiast point of view rather than a real expert or any kind of knowledge. Like I speak to guys like Jeremy Kirkland from Blammo and Jeremy's or Waco from the Rake, and those guys are just, when they talk about things like the bezel and all this other, and it's like, oh, it used to be this and it's this and now it's got and I'm like, dude, I have no idea what you're talking. I'm like, what's a moon phase? I have no idea. Like it's all
that's really
nuts,
good. I mean, that's refreshing. Like so often it's like, oh yeah, I know all about that, but you just gotta, we could have the same conversation about you with welted soles and so you've got to own your area. I think. I was wondering, so has that Amiga Dirty Dozen, has that led into other things yet, or you're holding off?
other purchases?
Yeah.
So weirdly that has, like, it's funny because I started putting now, because I also like vintage watches are great as well because there's a lot of examples of that you can pick up that where the pricing isn't prohibitive. Like you look at other watches like an Audemars Piguet or Patek Philippe and stuff like that, and those watches are stunning. But I'm like, there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to afford those. So I really Omega for me was a real, as I say, was a real opener, and there was a few other examples that I really liked, like the Speedmaster and the Pi Pan, and
Lovely.
I was luckily able to pick up a Pi Pan actually quite recently. What is my birthday this week actually, sorry.
Happy birthday.
And thank you very much. And it was one of those things, I don't know if other guys do this, I do this, I think we all do this, but that kind of thing where it's like, well, it's my birthday, I should treat myself. And so because I had that was almost the final, where you find something online and you obsess over it for ages.
Yeah. I'm like, it's a Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. That's the other. Like, it's raining outside.
Find a reason.
Yeah. And the guy that I was able to get this off of is a gentleman called Robin Man, who is Man About Time on Instagram.
Cool. I'll have to check him out.
Oh, he's great. Like, I love finding, there's all these, vintage watch emporiums and markets and eBay and obviously, but Robin was, he's one guy. He has a vintage display in Fortnum & Masons in London. And just that thing where, you're like, okay, there's authenticity and credibility here, and respectability, because, he's obviously, as I say, attached to, knows his watches, but then is also attached to Fortnum. So that thing, as I say, a novice, like, because I'm not necessarily able to even look at a watch and be like, okay, is this a fake, or is this, is there something wrong with it or whatever? And Robin was incredibly generous with his time, and me badgering him with questions about the Pi Pan that he had and other watches that he had on the site, and just other watch questions in general. And that, establishing that relationship with somebody was kind of very important to me, and kind of also was another factor in me kind of deciding, like, yes, okay, I can kind of get this. I want to buy this watch.
Very cool, very cool. So a question I'm going to ask you, a stylish guy like yourself, is a lot of people get really concerned about the dial dictating an outfit. They say, I can't wear this color dial with this jacket or with this shirt, or, not even the strap, the dial. And I look at it and I go, this is a 2 centimeter circle in circumference.
Exactly.
How important is it to the overall outfit? I never get too caught up in it, but I know a lot of people do. What do you think? Do you think a dial is, can make or break an outfit, or it's not really relevant?
I don't necessarily think it can make or break an outfit, but certainly I think there could be some watches, some examples that might look more strange on an outfit than another. And again, it's almost, again, those levels of formality and casualness, is that, if you have so for example, my Omega, the WWW, is on a NATO strap, and it's pretty, like, beaten up now. And I'm like, I maybe wouldn't necessarily wear now, especially now that I've got the Pi Pan, I wouldn't maybe necessarily, which is, a little more, a little cleaner, and, it's got the white face rather than the black face. I would almost use that watch more if I was wearing a suit rather than my, the Dirty Dozen. But at the end of the day, it's kind of, I don't know, like, there's so many things that, there's already too many things that guys can worry about, and things I think that can be overthought. Like, does the watch strap match the belt buckle, match the shoes? Like, not the belt buckle, the belt match does the hardware match? Is it, it's all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, don't overthink it. Like, I think you can kind of get an idea when you put a watch on, or, you put an outfit on, if it works, and if you feel it works, it's like, dude, go for it, do it. And especially, like, if it's something you love wearing, or what, I'm like, why not wear it,
100%. And you've just reminded me of something when you're sort of saying, you'll think about the occasion and maybe sort of build something around that. I know a lot of, watch people will do that with a watch. They'll go, all right, I'm going out, I want to wear this watch. What do I wear around it? Like, I don't think, people notice or care. Maybe except
it's
you.
Funny because no, it is funny because, like, certainly there's a lot of stuff, and I'll do this with my wife, where, and in terms of like putting an outfit together, or, like, deciding what you want to wear, And it's all, again, it's like my biggest thing is always just like try to have fun with it. But it's always great to have a jumping off point. Like if you, like, as you say, if watch guys, it's like their jumping off point is the watch. It's like, that's awesome. Like, okay, I want to wear this watch today. What, how is, what do I wear with this? And it's funny though, because as I say, you'll think about it so much, and then you'll literally go out and you'll maybe mention to a friend, or as I say, like I'll say this to my wife all the time. I'll be like, "Hey, what do you think?" And she's just like, "I didn't even notice that you had that on or whatever." And I'm just like, "Damn," like it's that weird thing where especially with men's, where I had a conversation with someone about this recently, where it's like that guys who are into menswear are basically not dressing to attract a partner. Really, there isn't maybe an element of that, but almost they're more dressing to get recognition from other guys who are into menswear. It's almost, you know what I mean?
Bro.
Like, exactly. It's like to get a head nod from somebody that you respect or whatever, like who recognizes what you got going on, or comes over and wants to, like, God, guys in menswear are the most tactile guys in the world, like especially at
Jeremy
Pity,
Kerr regramming it. That's what we were going for. We were going for the regram from Lamo.
Exactly, but like it's like an event like Pity, like the amount of like guys come over and like, oh my God, this jacket's amazing, like grabbing the lapels, like, great, what's this cloth, this is amazing, ooh, what's that watch, can I see that? Like it's so funny, like how weird that is, but also like that's, to me, I'm like, there's so many things, especially as I say, especially in menswear, that they're not, you're dressing to kind of get that recognition rather than
I think that happens with most hobbies. Last watch question for you.
Sure.
What's next? What have you got your eye on?
This is down the line, but it was, but as I say, this is an example that Robin had on his site, which he sold, which is a bit annoying. I don't think I could afford it anyway. But it was the Rolex GMT, but it was the Rootbeer.
Oh, lovely.
Rather than the Pepsi. Which, and the example, it's one of those weird things where it's like, but the example that he had on was just like that little bit worn. It wasn't too, like, it was almost, the coloring was almost matte rather than, sometimes you can see quite shiny examples. And it just looked, and I loved, and weirdly, growing up in Canada and growing up in like, root beer was like my go-to drink.
Amazing.
And I was just like, and you don't get it in the UK, you really don't. You get like artisanal root beer, which drives me insane. Because I want the cheap A&W, like really sugary stuff.
Yeah.
And you don't get that over here, which is really annoying. And like I saw that and I was like, oh, that's really, and because of, as I say, there's that bit of a link there as well. I love that. So I think probably that's something down the line that I'd love to. And if I could find an example, and this is, again, hopefully the type of relationship I kind of really wanted to kind of establish with, any, as you say, any guy that you talk to in the watch world, where, Robin, now I've kind of mentioned it to him as well, like, Robin be able to keep an eye out for it for me, like, so if he comes across an example, he knows, he's like, oh, I know Jamie will be interested in this or whatever. So yeah, fingers crossed, but that'll be really down the line, I think.
Yeah, that's
Cool.
that's a great choice, and if it's an older root beer, it's I think a watch that Clint Eastwood used to wear, so can't go wrong there.
Oh, snap. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I don't think, maybe he just wore it in a movie, but that's been associated.
Still,
with
I'll take that.
Exactly. And I don't think Clint made it into your book, this guy. He probably should have.
No. That would have been awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the next one. So tell us a quick, what's if we don't have a copy, what is it? How do we get it? All that sort of stuff.
So the book, it was nice because it came about at a time in my career where I wasn't necessarily looking for the next thing to do, but it was such an amazing project to have and to be able to focus on that. So I produced that over 2 years, from kind of conception of the idea to kind of the final, as you say, manuscript of it. So the book is essentially 20 guys around the world who I think have great style. All of them are directly or indirectly involved with menswear. And essentially each of them, I was always obsessed with, one of the photographers who got me into photography in the first place was Scott Schumann, the sartorialist. So I was always really obsessed with his photography and his street style photography. And then there was a guy who did a book, had a site called a guy called Todd Selby, who had a site called the Selby, where he would go around and visit artists' homes and shoot them in their spaces, their apartments, their houses, and whatnot, and then shoot little details of of things that they saw. And I kind of wanted to combine essentially those two kind of elements in my photography and kind of combine into this book. So the photographs of every guy, it's like we're either shooting in their house or around their neighborhood or their city. We're kind of shooting like their kind of a bit of their style, but it's more kind of there's a little interview with each guy before at the start of each chapter, where we talk about kind of their kind of like outlook on life, their philosophies, what style means to them, what their careers, their lives, how that's shaped them.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Amazing. Well, hopefully there's a follow up potentially. This gal.
It's ever since the book got released. Yeah, I have had a lot of people that are like, giving me like the next, like, right, if you do another one, it's got to be, you should be like couples, and it would be like these guys, or like, as you say, like somebody said to me as well, they're like, this gal was like, you should do women. And so yeah, so hopefully we are able to do a sequel to it of some kind. Yeah,
amazing. Well, let's link that up, and we'll get everyone buying some copies so that we can get Jamie that root beer. What we like to, we'll inundate you with orders. What we like to do to wrap a show out is we ask our guests for a recommendation. Can be something you've been watching, reading, listening to, eating, but we just like to hear different recos from around the world.
Right. So I've been certainly during lockdown as well, I've been doing a lot of cooking. There is a restaurant in London called Trullo, and they also have a pasta bar called Padella. And I was introduced to that pasta bar by George Glasgow Jr. from George Cleverly. We were shooting an article. He was doing a city tour of London for Hodinkee, and I was shooting it. And he was just like, right, I want to go have lunch at this place. This is, he's like, I think you'll like this. So it's amazing. Upstairs, downstairs pasta bar, where pasta is incredible. It's made fresh right in front of you. So guys are like there rolling out, making pasta there as you're eating. The pasta is, you get a plate of lots of different kinds of pasta, but it's a relatively small plate of pasta, and it's pretty cheap for how amazing the pasta is. And it means that you can kind of like get a few plates, which is really good. So you can try a bunch of different things, which I always kind of like. Nice. And I left there kind of being like, this is incredible. They've got to have a cookbook. Because I quite enjoy cooking, and I find it quite in my downtime as a way of relaxing. And they didn't have a Padella cookbook, but they had a Trullo cookbook it's by the same guy who opened Padella. And Trullo was their original, I believe their original restaurant, and it had a lot of pasta recipes in it, but as well, it had meats and other kind of. And so I got that, and I've been obsessively cooking from that over lockdown, and I highly recommend it to anybody. There's a lot of amazing recipes in there, like really, really great recipes. And then, funnily enough, with the Michael Jordan quote, anybody who has not watched The Last Dance has to watch The Last Dance. It's incredible. It was weirdly, I was bereft when there was only 10 episodes, and when it finished, and I was just kind of like, it was one of the best sports documentaries I've watched in a long time, and was such an amazing way of capturing a moment in time that I remember. So growing up in Canada, I was hilariously though at the time, I hated the Chicago Bulls. They were not I supported the Seattle Supersonics because Toronto didn't have the Raptors yet. And so I supported the Sonics when they had Gary Payton and Sean Kemp. And I remember that I think it's the 95 or the 96 finals. And I hated the Bulls. Like, they were just like, Jordan was just so good. And so it was amazing. It was so great to be able to see I love stuff like that, like behind the scenes. And also even seeing that kind of, that rivalry that existed, between and the respect as well that existed between, players and coaches and teams. You don't see that these days. Like, everybody, I don't know, because of the media, because of the press, because of social media, like everybody's friends, like everybody's so worried about saying the wrong thing, and understandably, because like at times they can get hung out to dry. But seeing as you say, that kind of like, I'm like, especially with sports, I'm like, it's okay to, hate the other team, or like hate, I'm like, it's a rivalry, it's okay. But like almost that level, like, playing as hard as you can and wanting to beat the, it's a sign of, a sign of respect. And it's just that kind of, that intensity, I just feel isn't really there anymore in sports, or at least maybe in terms of press conferences. Because it was what stuck out to me in that documentary was just that scene where it's where Jordan, was it the 97, I think it might be the 90, was it 97 or 98? It was whenever they beat the Pacers in the Eastern Conference, the Eastern Conference Finals, and it was game 7. They had to close it out, and they did. And this is when Larry Bird, who had played, Jordan and they played against one another, and Bird was coaching the Pacers, and they meet. They're both, wearing suits. And they meet in the, whatever it is, the hallway, between the locker rooms afterwards. And like, the respect that's there, but the first thing that Jordan says to me is just like, "Fuck you, you bitch." And I was just like, "You just beat his team. Like, this seems really hard." And he's like, "Have fun working on your golf game in the summer." And I'm just like, that's like,
bring back the sledging.
Oh my God. Like just, I can't imagine anybody saying anything like that these days, especially. Yeah. And I love that. So if anybody hasn't seen that, watch it. It's
amazing.
It's so good.
Amazing. Well, Jamie Ferguson, aka JKF Man, thank you so much for joining us, guys. Check out Jamie's Instagram, JKF_MAN, his website, jkfman.com, all one word. It contains all his contact details. Buy his book. Let's get him that root beer.
Let's do it.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute treat, and we've learned a lot.
Cheers. Thanks very much, guys.
Bam. And we are out. Andy, what a guy. What a fascinating gentleman. I can feel the sartorialness through the audio waves. Sartorialness, is that a word?
Guy.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. It's time to go, though. It's time to, hit stop recording in a second, but we've got to say a few words of thank you before that. Of course.
Well, thank you, Jamie. What a bloody sweetheart, can I just say?
Yeah, I think.
Delightful. But thank you, eBay, for sponsoring this episode. Guys, check out the links that we put in the show notes to support us. Obviously, we always are thankful to Inglewood Coffee Roasters for keeping us caffeinated and energized. So Inglewood
particularly thankful
Roasters.
to Inglewood Coffee this morning.
I bet you were. You had a late start. OT30, 30% off. Free shipping in Victoria. Free shipping Australia-wide when you spend over $50. Thank you to Major Tom Media for putting the show together. Thank you all for listening. If you want to get in touch, otthepodcast@gmail.com or on Instagram, ot.podcast.
Outstanding.
We will see you soon in your ears.
We'll see you without our eyes.
Catch you then, guys.